If everything is racist, then nothing is racist. How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about a 70-ton rock that has been deemed as racist. Yes, a rock, a big rock, kind of like a boulder, nothing on it. We're not talking about like Stone Mountain out there in the Atlanta, Georgia area, where this giant mountain kind of rock thing has carvings of Confederate generals on it. We're not talking about anything like that. It is a plain old rock. That's it. So why is it racist? What's the story behind it? Glad you asked. Great question. Let's back up a little bit. Now, back in 1925, on the campus of University of Wisconsin, on this place called Observatory Hill, a giant rock was extracted from the hill. And it was a prized thing. You know, it was in the papers back then. You had guys taking pictures with it because, you know, you just find this random, gigantic, humongous rock in this hill. It's like a geological prize, right? Now, back then in 1925, a term for rocks like this, a general term, not just for this rock, but for rocks in general, was N-word head. I'm censoring myself because I will get flagged on YouTube for saying the actual racial slur. N-word head. That was a general name for large, dark rocks in the 1920s. Not just for that one, but for rocks like that. It'd be like me calling it a boulder. Boulder is not the name of the rock. It's just describing how big the rock is. Same thing with N-word head. That's not the name of the rock. It's describing how the rock looks, the size of the rock. That's it. The name of the rock is called the Chamberlain Rock because Thomas Carter Chamberlain was a president of the college back in the day. That's what it's called. It's not called N-word head. But because some rocket scientists, some researcher extraordinaire found that paper from back in the day and they see the word N-word head, the news stories have been saying it's removed because it has a racist name. It was a commonly used name for this rock, and it had been used for a long time. There's only one instance of quote unquote N-word head ever being used to describe that rock, and that was back in that paper in 1925. That is it. So you're talking about what, almost 100 years ago? Really? Like, yeah, we're almost like 100 years. 95, 96 years ago. We're looking at that as a reason why we got to remove the entire rock. Not even enough to just say, okay, Chamberlain Rock, which is what it already is. That's not enough. We got to just take the rock away. And they did. They got a crane or whatever they want to call this particular instrument, put some straps on it, put it on the back of a wide load flatbed, and drove it away. I'm not exactly sure where it's at now, but I'll provide information about that in the description box. But this is where we've come. I figured this would be where we're at right now. First, it was a Confederate monuments. I said it back when that whole thing was going on, probably about 5-6 years ago. I said it back then. You're going to start with this, and then it's going to get absurd. Because my thing is like this. Most of these monuments, the Confederate monuments, nobody even knows where they are. There was a Confederate monument in Virginia Beach that I didn't even know. I had to search for it. I didn't even know where it was. You know, nobody's offended. Nobody really cares. It's not a big deal. And the one in Portsmouth, Virginia, back where I used to live, actually, that was really sad because you had all these BLM people out there trying to get clout, trying to get attention, and they were tearing that Confederate monument down. And then a piece of it fell on the guy, hit him in his head, and gave him a traumatic brain injury. Now he's barely able to walk, barely able to move. It's like, what was that even for? What did you even accomplish? Why? What's the purpose? You see, like, trying to go out there and take these things down is doing more harm than good. And then they are trying to dig up old Confederate generals. I think they were trying to dig up Nathan Bedford Forrest out there in Memphis, him and his wife. If I'm wrong about that, let me know in the comments. It's one thing to just say, okay, this statue needs to go to a museum. That's bad enough. Then you want to say, okay, let's dig up these people. That's just going above and beyond. It's like, they're dead. What are they gonna actually do? You're digging up bones. Why? For what? Unnecessary, completely unnecessary. And then, as I predicted, the Confederate generals get removed. They're digging up their graves and whatnot. I said the next thing would be Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington. Trump said it. Remember the whole thing about the good people on both sides, which was right, by the way, because the whole thing about Charlottesville, and if you guys don't know, I've said it over and over and over again, but maybe you're a new viewer. The thing about Charlottesville is that the issue was a statue of Robert E. Lee on the campus of UVA in Charlottesville. That's all it was. Some people said, leave it right there. Some people said, don't leave it right there. That was the whole dispute. Now, from this dispute came other groups from all over the country. You had a bunch of Black Lives Matter and Antifa type groups. Then you had your neo-Nazi, Klan type groups. They came to this rally that wasn't even really about either one of them. It was about the statue. So when Trump said there was good people on both sides, he's not referring to the hate groups, to the violent groups, to the subversive groups. You're talking about regular, everyday normies that were there for the purpose of the statue, and that was it. But people just want to look at the sensational, the random weirdos that came down to Virginia, who not even from Virginia. They came from California, New York, etc. They're looking at them as being the face of it when that wasn't even the case. So yes, there were good people on both sides, right? But getting back to this whole thing about some of the other monuments, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, as Trump said during that good people on both sides speech, it's like, okay, where do we go next? How about George Washington? He was a slave owner. Thomas Jefferson, same thing. And we've already seen that. They removed a bust of George Washington from George Washington University in D.C. The school is named after him. They removed his likeness from the school. So it's like, all right, where do we go next? Are we going to change the name of Washington State, Washington, D.C.? You know, where I live in Virginia, you got George Washington Highway right there in Chesapeake, like a big highway. Are we going to change that? Or are we going to change every single thing? Lee Highway, all this, like, and what is the actual purpose? But see, that's kind of been happening. A lot of schools have been renamed. Schools that I didn't even know were named after quote unquote Confederate generals are being changed. And you got to pay money to do it. I don't really understand, but that's happening. So I guess the next thing is, okay, we're taking down these statues, taking down these monuments. We're defacing Abraham Lincoln statues, although he freed the slaves. He literally freed the slaves. The argument for the Confederates was they were trying to, promote slavery. They were slave owners, which that's kind of a different story because once the Confederates came, that was at the end of slavery. It only lasted for like 4 years of the Confederates, but that's a different story. Anyway, that was the whole thing about the Confederates. They're racist. They want slaves. Then it was, okay, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, they're racist too because they had slaves. Abraham Lincoln, I'm not really sure why they turned him down because he's the guy that freed the slaves. I guess because he didn't free it for the right reasons, then he has to get torn down as well. And he's a white man, so white man bad. But that's not enough. Now, rather than removing, renaming, we're going to take away rocks that were named certain things. Okay, this is not... The Rock was not in a Confederate on the Confederate Army fighting against the Union. The Rock was not out here lynching people. The Rock was just a rock. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. But because one newspaper named it a racist thing in 1925, let's remove it. So where do we go next? I'm trying to figure out like what happens next. I mean, if you get a pimple and it's a blackhead, are we going to continue to call it blackhead because that could be considered the N-word because that's what the N-word is for? The N-word is, slang for Negro, which means black in Spanish. So are we going to say blackhead? That's racist too. Where are we going to actually take it from here? You know what I think as I close? I feel like a lot of these kids on these college campuses are bored. They're bored and they want attention. So what better way to get some attention and to not be bored than to make up some kind of random racist boogeyman. You got all these actual figures in the past, former president, generals. You have actual people that can be identified as racist. But when that's exhausted, let's go to these inanimate objects and call those racist as well because of what one person called it in 1925 and never again at any time beyond that. It's so dumb. It's so ridiculous. But this is what we're dealing with right now in the year 2021. This is why education is so important. This is why critical race theory is such a bad thing to have going on. And this whole thing is the way that miseducation manifests itself when everything becomes racist. As I said from the beginning, nothing is racist. But I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? Was University of Wisconsin at Madison correct to remove this rock? Because, I mean, how do you live with it knowing that this rock was called something racist 100 years ago and you got to walk past it every day? It has nothing on it. There's no carvings on it. And it was not instrumental in the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, or nothing like that. It wasn't in the Civil Rights Movement. It didn't march with the Klan in 1921 or whenever that was, DNC. It didn't do anything like that. But because somebody called it something racist, how could you walk past that every day and keep your sanity? Whatever your thoughts on that are, let me know in the comments below. You guys know where I'm at. These kids are bored, have no real struggle, I guess you would say, so they got to create one. There's no real battle to fight, so you got to make a battle to fight. I think it's dumb. I think people should appreciate how peaceful this place is, and if they want to maintain the peace, they want to contribute to the world, you know, join the military, join the police department, fire department, do something like that. Do something. Figure out a way to be useful, become a tradesman, do something like that to add to society rather than just making up things to shake your fist at and get triggered at and sing all these neo-slave hymnals for. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.